Welcome back to the Design Studio. Today I am going to show you how to build this great statement piece, the structure, and how to design with it with minimal flower but huge impact. Alright, so let's talk about the products we're going to be using for this focal structure. So we have our different color roses that we're going to use. And again, you could use whatever colors fit your event. So I cut them off, gave a little nub at the top. Tulips we're going to use, a couple different varieties of tulips. I cut them up flat where you still have some of the foliage because I think the stem is really pretty, so we want to keep some of that stem. A little bit of hypericum berry and take off all of the foliage so you just have that, and again keep a little bit of a nub on top, and then some beautiful bleached ruscus, and we're going to cut it at length. And you can make this into different parts, like if you wanted to get 3 parts out of this you can keep cutting it, but for what I'm going to use it for I want the length, so keep it like that. Take your copper bouillon, and for the ruscus, just feed it underneath a couple of the arms. Tie it, and then wrap it up, opposite directions. The nice thing about bouillon is it catches on itself, so it really does secure. And we want to make sure that we leave enough length so that we can hang it from the structure. So a good arm's length will be good. Do the same thing with your hypericum. And it's good to get all of these pieces prepped before you actually start the construction, because the last thing you want to do is stop midway and keep readjusting. So I find that it's easier to get all of your prep work done so when it goes to building it, you can just have fun and build it away. So those are for those items. Now for the roses and the tulips, what we use is these pixie pens, which I love pixie pens for this kind of design. Take a strand of your copper wire, give it a little bit of a twist so you have a loop, put it through the pen, and twist it around. So then your pen is locked onto that. A trick is to have paper down so you can just prep all of these at once. That'll save you time. So you're not prepping, gluing, you can get all of them prepped and do it as a system. And if you didn't have paper down, then once you put these onto your table, they would just fall all over and get tangled up. So that's the one advantage of using the paper. And when we start to glue, it keeps the mess safe. One more. If you didn't want to use the bouillon, you could use fish line, and then the strands really do become invisible then. The advantage with the bouillon is because when we tie it up, and you'll see when we start to tie, it locks in on itself so it doesn't slip away. Sometimes fish line can do that. So next we're going to take our Oasis adhesive. Just put a little dab at the top of the rose and stick the pin right in. And then we'll do that with all the rest. If you get a little bit too much glue, wipe it off. And what this does, it locks the moisture into the rose, so then your rows will last a little bit longer. And I use the pin because they're suspended, so I don't want to see just the raw rows. I want to see like the pretty pin. And if you wanted to do a pop of color, there's so many color pins, you could do total different varieties. And we're going to do the same thing with the tulip. Oops. And I would suggest cutting them and letting them sit for a few minutes before you glue them. Otherwise, there's still some moisture. But if there's a lot of moisture, just dab it on your paper a little bit to dry off the end. So that is our elements. And again, prepare all of your elements ahead of time, and that way we can get the structure going. It'll be much easier for you. So for our structure, what you're going to need is some copper pipe. I used 1/2 inch for the structure that we're doing today. If you're going to put a lot of weight on there, like oasis cages, you might want to go up to a 1 inch pipe. Some caps, some tees. Johnny, our producer, said these are called. I don't know, I'm not handy, but he says they're tees, so we're going to go with tees. And some bends, I don't know. There's probably a technical name. I'm not handy, I'm sorry. I can show you how to do it though. So these are the elements that you're going to need. And the pipe is going to vary on how big of a structure you're building. I wanted to show you this. This is a Cobalt screw feed copper cutter. And so when I went to the hardware, I explained to the guy, like, I'm not handy, so what would I need to cut this? And he gave me this tool. It has worked so well for me, and I think it was like $15. It was really not a lot of money, but I just want to show you quickly how easy it is. I use a latex glove, but you could use a non-slip grub because you want to hold on to it. So what you're going to do, it has a simple push button to go whatever size you want it to be. So you put your tube in there. All right, so then the tube's in. And then you screw back here, and you just screw it a little bit, just to get a little bit of a tight. And then you just wrap it around, and after you go around a couple of times, you just keep tightening it. Because what it's doing is the cutter is burying itself into the pipe. But so easy to do. It's these lifesavers, right? Like done. And you get a very clean cut. Simple. So definitely a tool that you should have if you're going to use any kind of copper piping. This is definitely what you should use. All right. There's two methods of soldering the pieces together. I chose to do a cold solder because at some point for storage, I might want to pop the glue so I can store it up. You could definitely use a soldering gun, but cold solder seems to work fine. They, at the hardware, recommended this Loctite clear silicone. And for the structures I built for this video, it's worked out perfectly. So what you're going to do is just put a little dab inside your pieces, and you got to just slide it on. That'll lock it in place. What I find is that it gets tacky really fast. So you want to not glue all of your pieces, then assemble. I would do a glue assemble, one piece at a time. And you don't need to go overboard on it because you don't want a lot of that glue seeping out at the end. A little bit will do you. So those are the elements that you're going to need to actually build the structure. So now let's pull the structure out and we can show you how we did it. Okay, so this is the structure we built for it. It is a 7-foot piece in length for the height on both sides, a 3-foot section here, and it's also a 3-foot section at the bottom back brace. Each one of these down here is 12 inches on both sides. If you're going to put a block of Oasis or more of a heavy design, then instead of putting the caps at the bottom, do the same thing you did at the back and put a 3-foot brace along the front, and that'll give you a little bit more structure. But for us, I wanted that opening to be there. So again, 7 foot high, 3 foot wide. and it could customize it to whatever you need it to be. So I'm going to bring out my ladder because we're going to need it for this. And we're going to start hanging up the pieces. So imagine what your design is going to be before you start. Start with your lowest piece. And all you have to do is just twist this wire around a couple of times. That is the one nice thing about the bullion wire, is that you can do that versus fish line, which would slip a lot and you would have to really knot it. The bullion is such an amazing part for us. So that is going to be as long as the design is going to go for this. And the nice thing, just cut this off. Leave a little bit of a space at the top, because what's going to happen is when you're designing, it's nice that you can just kind of slide these to go wherever you want them to go. And we'll do the other one over here. And you can see that it's already starting to take the shape that we're looking for. So that's how you get it started with hanging. As you can see, with the ruscus and the roses, you're starting to get that V shape that we're going for, right? So these are the most hardy, so that's why I put the roses up with the ruscus. Next will be the tulips, and the reason I didn't put the tulips up ahead of time is because if you're moving stuff around and hitting them, you could lose some stem petals off the tulips. So that's why I keep the fragile flowers to the last part of it. Also with these, I love the green line in it and some of the foliage. This is really the only green accent we have, so keep some of that foliage for you. And it's the same concept. Put it up, but when you do the tulips, make sure you keep that green line where you have a negative space, because that'll really pop that space for you. So far we have on here 24 roses, and there's going to be 20 tulips. So as you can see, I went ahead and added the tulips, which adds that gorgeous green line. The hypericum, which again you have a little bit more of a green line in there, and that just fills out all that negative space. I would use this for a wedding ceremony backdrop or a sweetheart table backdrop. So many things you can do with this copper structure. And if you add in 2 more pieces that are already done, it'll give you dimension. And you can see by this that now you have a great dimension happening with all of the different varieties. These poles are 6 feet tall and the width is 2 feet, just so you get an idea of the dimensions for this. The reason we left the bottom rail knot on is you can see from the bottom, they kind of fit into each other now. And so you have this interesting design with the copper bottom. So you wouldn't necessarily have to cover that. I wouldn't put anything down there. I think it looks interesting the way it is. And how great when you have your customers and you can rent this to them for the ceremony as a backdrop. And then these small ones could become the entryway to the reception, and the big one could be behind the table. There's so many different ways you can create the room around one set of rental pieces. So I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so very much, and I will see you soon.